he sold as being good for nothing. This fellow by some accident, was afterwards purchased by one of Caesar's men and became shoemaker to Caesar. You should have seen what respect Epaphroditus paid him then. How does the good Felicion? Kindly let me know. And if any of us inquired, what is Epaphroditus doing? The answer was, he is consulting about so-and-so with Felicion. Had he not sold him as good for nothing, who had in a trice converted him into a wiseacre? This is what comes of holding of importance anything but the things that depend on the will. What you shun, enduring yourself, attempt not to impose on others. You shun slavery. Beware of enslaving others. If you can endure to do that, one would think you had been once upon a time a slave yourself. For vice has nothing in common with virtue, nor freedom with slavery. Has a man been raised to the tribuneship? Every one that he meets congratulates him. One kisses him on the eyes, another on the neck, while the slaves kiss his hands. He goes home to find torches burning. He ascends to the Capitol to sacrifice. Whoever sacrificed for having had right desires, for having conceived such inclinations as nature would have him. In truth, we thank the gods for that wherein we place our happiness. A man was talking to me today about the priesthood of Augustus. I said to him, let the thing go, my good sir. You will spend a great deal to no purpose. Well, but my name will be inserted in all the documents and contracts. Will you be standing there to tell those that read them, that is my name written there? And even though you could now be there in every case, what will you do when you are dead? At all events, my name will remain. Inscribe it on a stone, and it will remain just as well, and think beyond Nicopolis what memory of you will there be. But I shall have a golden wreath to wear. If you must have a wreath, get a wreath of roses and put it on. You will look more elegant. Above all, remember that the door stands open. Be not more fearful than children, but as they, when they weary of the game, cry, I will play no more. Even so, when thou art in the like case, cry, I will play no more, and depart. But if thou sayest, make no lamentation. Is there smoke in the room? If it be slight, I remain. If grievous, I quit it. For you must remember this and hold it fast. The door stands open. You shall not dwell at Nicopolis. Well and good, nor at Athens. Then I will not dwell at Athens either, nor at Rome. Nor at Rome either. You shall dwell in Gyara. Well, but to dwell in Gyara seems to me like a grievous smoke. Depart to a place where none can forbid me to dwell. That habitation is open to all. For as for the last garment of all, that is the poor body. Beyond that none cannot do aught unto me. This is why Demetrius said to Nero, you threaten me with death, but it is nature who threatens you. The beginning of philosophy is to know the condition of one's own mind. If a man recognizes that this is in a weakly state, he will not then want to apply it to questions of the greatest moment. As it is, men who are not fit to swallow even a morsel buy whole treatises and try to devour them. Accordingly, they either vomit them up again or suffer from indigestion, whence come gripings, fluxions, and fevers, whereas they should have stopped to consider their capacity. In theory, it is easy to convince an ignorant. In actual life, men not only object to offer themselves to be convinced, but hate the man who has convinced them. Whereas Socrates used to say that we should never lead a life not subjected to examination. This is the reason why Socrates, when reminded that he should prepare for his trial, answered, thinkest thou not that I have been preparing for it all my life? In what way? I have maintained that which in me lay. How so? I have never secretly, openly done wrong unto any. In what character dost thou now come forward? As a witness summoned by God. Come thou, saith God, and testify for me, for thou art worthy of being brought forward as a witness by me. Is aught that is outside thy will either good or bad? Do I hurt any man? Have I placed the good of each in the power of any other than himself? What witness dost thou bear to God? I am in evil state, master, I am undone. None careth for me, none giveth me aught. All men blame, all speak evil of me. Is this the witness thou wilt bear and do dishonor to the calling wherewith he hath called thee? Because he hath done thee so great honor, and deemed thee worthy of being summoned to bear witness in so great a cause? Wouldst thou have men speak good of thee? Speak good of them. And when thou hast learned to speak good of them, try to do good unto them, and thus thou wilt reap in return their speaking good of thee. When thou goest into any of the great, remember that another from above sees what is passing, and that thou shouldest please him rather than man. He therefore asks thee, in the schools, what didst thou call exile, imprisonment, bonds, death, and shame? I call them different things, and I call them things indifferent. What then dost thou call them now? Are they at all changed? No. It is then thou that art changed? No. Say then, what are things indifferent? Things that are not in our power. Say then what follows, that things which are not in our power are nothing to me. Say also what things you hold to be good, a will such as it ought to be, and a right use of the things of sense. And what is the end? To follow thee. That Socrates should ever have been so treated by the Athenians, slave. Why say Socrates? Speak of the thing as it is, that ever then the poor body of Socrates should have been dragged away and haled by main force to prison. That ever hemlock should have been given to the body of Socrates, that should have breathed its life away. Do you marvel at this? Do you hold this unjust? Is it for this that you accuse God? Had Socrates no compensation for this? Where then for him was the ideal good? Whom shall we hearken to, you or him? And what says he? Anytus and Miletus may put me to death, to injure me is beyond their power. And again, if such be the will of God, so let it be. Nay, young man, for heaven's sake, but once thou hast heard these words, go home and say to thyself, it is not Epictetus that has told me these things, how indeed should he? No, it is some gracious God through him, else it would never have entered his head to tell me them. He that is not used to speak to any one thus, well then let us not lie under the wrath of God, but be obedient unto him. Nay, indeed, but if a raven by its croaking bears thee any sign, it is not the raven, but God that sends the sign through the raven. And if he signifies anything to thee through human voice, will he not cause the man to say these words to thee, that thou mayest know the power of the divine? How he sends a sign to some in one way, and to others in another, and on the greatest and highest matters of all signifies his will through the noblest messenger. What else does the poet mean? I spake unto him erst myself, and sent Hermes in the shining, one to check and warn him, the husband not to slay, nor woo the wife. In the same way, my friend Heraclitus, who had a trifling suit about a petty farm at Rhodes, first showed the judges that his cause was just, and then at the finish cried, I will not entreat you, nor do I care what sentence you pass. It is you who are on your trial, not I. And so he ended the case. As for us, we behave like a herd of deer when they flee from the huntsman's feathers in affright. Which way do they turn? What haven of safety do they make for? Why, they rush upon the nets, and thus they perish by confounding what they should fear with that wherein no danger lies. Not death or pain is to be feared, but the fear of death or pain. Well said the poet, therefore, death has no terror, only a death of shame. How is it then that certain external things are said to be natural, and others contrary to nature? Why, just as it might be said if we stood alone and apart from others, a foot, for instance, I will allow it is natural should be clean, but if you take it as a foot, and as a thing which does not stand by itself, it will beseem it, if need be, to walk in the mud, to tread on thorns, and sometimes even to be cut off for the benefit of the whole body. Else it is no longer a foot. In some such way we should conceive of ourselves also. What art thou, a man? Looked at as standing by thyself and separate, it is natural for thee in health and wealth long to live. but looked at as a man and only as a part of a whole. It is for that whole's sake that thou shouldst at one time fall sick, at another brave the perils of the sea again, know the meaning of want, and perhaps die an early death. Why then repine? Knowest thou not? As the foot is no more a foot if detached from the body, so thou in like case art no longer a man. For what is a man? A part of a city. First of the city of gods and of men. Next of that which ranks nearest it, a miniature of the universal city. In such a body, in such a world enveloping us, among lives like these, such things must happen to one or another. Thy part then being there is to speak of these things as is meet, and to order them as befits the matter. That was a good reply which Diogenes made to a man who asked him for letters of recommendation. That you are a man, he will know when he sees you whether a good or a bad one. He will know if he has any skill in discerning the good and the bad. But if he has none, he will never know, though I write to him 1,000 times. It is as though a piece of silver money desired to be recommended to someone to be tested. If the man be a good judge of silver, he will know the coin will tell its own tale. Even as the traveler asks his way of him that he meets, inclined in no wise to bear to the right rather than to the left, for he desires only the way leading whither he would go, so should we come unto God as to a guide, even as we use our eyes, without admonishing them, to show us some things rather than others, but content to receive the images of such things as they present unto us. But as it is, we stand anxiously watching the victim, and with the voice of supplication call upon the augur, Master, have mercy on me, vouchsafe unto me a way of escape. Slave, would you then have aught else than what is best? Is there anything better than what is God's good pleasure? Why, as far as in you lies, would you corrupt your judge and lead your counselor astray? God is beneficent, but the good also is beneficent. It should seem then that where the real nature of God is, there too is to be found the real nature of the good. What then is the real nature of God? Intelligence, knowledge, right, reason. Here then, without more ado, seek the real nature of the good, for surely thou dost not seek it in a plant or in an animal that reasoneth not. Seek then the real nature of the good in that without whose presence thou wilt not admit the good to exist in aught else. What then? Are not these other things also works of God? They are, but not preferred to honor, nor are they portions of God. But thou art a thing preferred to honor, thou art thyself a fragment torn from God. Thou hast a portion of him within thyself. How is it then that thou dost not know thy high descent, dost not know whence thou comest? Dost not know whence thou comest? When thou eatest, wilt thou not remember who thou art that eatest and whom thou feedest? In intercourse, in exercise, in discussion, knowest thou not that it is a God whom thou feedest, a God whom thou exercisest, a God whom thou bearest about with thee, O miserable? And thou perceivest it not. Thinkest thou that I speak of a God of silver or gold that is without thee? Nay, thou bearest him within thee, all unconscious of polluting him with thoughts impure and unclean deeds. Were an image of God present, thou wouldst not dare to act as thou dost. Yet when God himself is present within thee, beholding and hearing all, thou dost not blush to think that such thoughts and do such deeds. O thou that art insensible of thine own nature, and liest under the wrath of God. Why then are we afraid when we send a young man from the schools into active life, lest he should indulge his appetites intemperately, lest he should debase himself by ragged clothing, or be puffed up by fine raiment? Knowest he not the God within him? Knowest he not with whom he is starting on his way? Have we patience to hear him say to us, Would I had thee within me? Hast thou not God where thou art, and having him dost thou still seek for any other? Would he tell thee aught what else than these things? Why, wert thou a statue of Phidias, and Athena, or a Zeus, thou wouldst bethink thee both of thyself and thine artificer. And hadst thou any sense, thou wouldst strive to do no dishonor to thyself or him that fashioned thee. nor appear to beholders in unbefitting guise. But now, because God is thy maker, is that why thou carest not of that of what sort thou shalt know thyself to be. Yet how different the artists and their workmanship. What human artists' work, for example, has in the faculties that are displayed in fashioning it. Is it aught but marble, bronze, gold, or ivory? Nay, when the Athena of Phidias has put forth her hand and received therein a victory, in that attitude she stands forevermore. But God's works move and breathe, they use and judge the things of sense, the workmanship of such an artist. Wilt thou dishonor him? Aye, when he not only fashioned thee, but placed thee like a ward in the care and guardianship of thyself alone, wilt thou not only forget this, but also do dishonor to what is committed to thy care? If God had entrusted thee with an orphan, wouldst thou have thus neglected him? He hath delivered thee to thine own care, saying, I had none more faithful than myself. Keep this man for me, such as nature hath made him, modest, faithful, high-minded, a stranger to fear, to passion, to perturbation. Such will I show myself to you all, what exempt from sickness also, from age, from death. Nay, but accepting sickness, accepting death as becomes a god. No labor, according to Diogenes, is good, but that which aims at producing courage and strength of soul rather than of body. A guide on finding a man who has lost his way brings him back to the right path. He does not mock and jeer at him and then take himself off. You also must show the unlearned man the truth, and you will see that he will follow, but so long as you do not show it to him. You should not mock, but rather feel your own incapacity. It was the first and most striking characteristic of Socrates never to become heated in discourse, never to utter an injurious or insulting word. On the contrary, he persistently bore insult from others, and thus put an end to the fray. If you care to know the extent of his power in this direction, read Xenophon's Banquet, and you will see how many quarrels he put an end to. That is why the poets are right in so highly commending this faculty. Quickly and wisely, with all, even bitter feuds, would he settle. Nevertheless, the practice is not very safe at present, especially in Rome. One who adopts it, I need not say, ought not to carry it out in an obscure corner, but boldly accost, if occasion serves some personage of rank or wealth. Can you tell me, sir, to whose care you entrust your horses? I can. Is it to the first comer who knows nothing about them? Certainly not. Well, what of the man who takes care of your gold, your silver, or your raiment? He must be experienced also. And your body? Have you ever considered about entrusting it to anyone's care? Of course I have. And no doubt to a person of experience as a trainer, a physician, surely. Are these things the best you possess, or have you anything more precious? What can you mean? I mean, that which employs thee, which weighs all things, which takes counsel and resolve. Oh, you mean the soul. You take me rightly, I do mean the soul. By heaven, I hold that far more precious than all else I possess. Can you show me, then, what care you bestow on the soul? For it can scarcely be thought that a man of your wisdom and consideration in the city would suffer your most precious possession to go to ruin through carelessness and neglect. Certainly not. Well, do you take care of it yourself? Did anyone teach you the right method, or did you discover it yourself? Now here comes in the danger. First, the great man may answer, why, what is it that to you, my good fellow? Are you my master? And then, if you persist in troubling him, may raise his hand to strike you. It is a practice of which I was myself warm admirer, until such experiences as these befell me. When a youth was giving himself airs in the theatre, and saying, I am wise, for I have conversed with many wise, Epictetus replied, I too have conversed with many rich men, yet I am not rich. We see that a carpenter becomes a carpenter by learning certain things, like that of a pilot. By learning certain things becomes a pilot. Possibly also in the present case, the mere desire to be wise and good is not enough. It is necessary to learn certain things. Is then the object of our search. The philosophers would have us first learn that there is a God, and that his providence directs the universe. Further, that to hide from him not only one's acts, but even one's thoughts and intentions is impossible. Secondly, what the nature of God is, show you that you lack just what is most important and necessary to happiness. That hitherto your attention has been bestowed on everything rather than that which claims it most, and to crown all that you know neither what God nor man is, neither what God nor evil is. Why? That you are ignorant of everything else, perhaps you may bear to be told, but to hear that you know nothing of yourself, how could you submit to that? How could you stand your ground and suffer that to be proved? Clearly not at all. You instantly turn away in wrath. Yet what harm have I done you? Unless indeed the mirror harms the ill-favored man by showing him to himself just as he is, unless the physician can be thought to insult his patient when he... Do you suppose there is nothing new? Why, you have a feast, eat nothing today, and drink only water. Yet no one says what an insufferable man. Your desires are inflamed, your instinct action are weak and low, your aims are inconsistent, your impulses are not in harmony with nature, your opinions are rash and false. He forthwith goes away and complains that you have insulted him. Your way of life resembles a fair. The flocks and herds are passed along to be sold, and the greater part of the crowd to buy and sell. But there are some who come only to look at the fair, to inquire how and why it is being held, by what authority and with what object. So too, in this great fair of life, some, like the cattle, trouble themselves about nothing but the fodder. Now all of you who are busied about land, slaves, and public posts, that there are nothing but fodder. Some few things are attending the fair, of to contemplate what the is, what he that administers it. Can there be no administrator? Is it possible that while neither city nor household could endure even for a moment without one to administer and see to its welfare, this fabric so fair, so vast should be administered in order so harmonious, without a purpose, and by blind chance? There is therefore an administrator. What is his nature, and how much and how does he administer? Who are we that are his children, and what work will we born to perform? Have we any close connection or relation with him or not? Such are the impressions of the few of whom I speak, and further they apply themselves solely to considering and examining the great assembly before they depart. While they are derided by the multitude, so are the lookers on by the traders. Aye, and if the beasts had any sense, they would deride those who thought much of anything but fodder. I think I know now what I never knew before, the meaning of the common saying, "Fool, you can neither bend nor break." Pray heaven I may never have a wise fool for my friend. There is nothing more intractable, my resolve is fixed. Why, so madmen say too, but the more firmly they believe in the delusions, the more they stand in need of treatment. Oh, when shall I see Athens and its Acropolis again? Miserable man, art thou not contented with the daily sights and meet thine eyes? Canst thou behold aught greater or nobler than the sun, moon, and stars, than the outspread earth and sea? If indeed thou apprehendest him who administers the universe, if thou bearest him about within thee, canst thou still hanker after mere fragments of stone and a fine rock? When thou art about to bid farewell to the sun and moon itself, wilt thou sit down and cry like a child? Why, what didst thou hear? What didst thou learn? Why didst thou write thyself down a philosopher when thou mightest have written what was the fact, namely, I have made one or two companions. I have read some works of Chrysippus, and I have not even touched the hem of philosophy's robe. Friend, we hold the desperate grasp there, it is too late on freedom, tranquility, a greatness of soul. Lift up thy thread, lift up thy head, as one escaped from slavery. Dare to look up to God and say, deal with me henceforth as thou wilt. Thou and I are one of one mind. I am thine, I refuse nothing that seemeth good to thee. Gone whither thou wilt, cloth me in what garb thou pleasest. Wilt thou have me a ruler or a subject, at home or in exile, poor or rich? All these things will I justify. Until men from thee, I will show the true nature of each. Let Hercules have been, had he lorded it home, no Hercules, but Eurystheus. And in his wanderings through the world, how many friends and comrades did he find, but nothing dearer to him than God? Wherefore he was believed to be God's son, as indeed he was. So then, in obedience to him, He went about delivering the earth from injustice and lawlessness. But thou art not Hercules, thou sayest, and canst not deliver others from their iniquity, not even Theseus to deliver the soil of Attica from its monsters. Put away thine own, cast forth thence from thine own mind, not robbers and monsters, but fear, desire, envy, malignity, avarice, effeminacy, intemperance. And these may not be cast out except by looking to God alone, by fixing thy affections on him only, and by consecrating thyself to his commands. If thou choosest aught else with sighs and groans, thou wilt be forced to follow a might greater than thine own, ever seeking tranquility without, never able to attain unto her. For thou seekest her where she is not to be found, and where she is, there thou seekest her not. If a man would pursue philosophy, his first task is to throw away conceit. For it is impossible for a man to begin to learn what he has a conceit that he already knows. For it is impossible for a man to begin to learn what he has a conceit, that he already knows. Give me one young man that has come to the school with this intention, who stands forth a champion of this cause and says, all else I renounce, content if I am but able to pass my life free from hindrance and trouble, to raise my head aloft and face all things as a freed man, to look up to heaven and as a friend of God, fearing nothing that may come to pass. Point out such a one to me, that I may say, enter, young man, into possession of that which is thine own. For thy lot is to adorn philosophy. Thine are these possessions, thine these books, these discourses. And when our champion has duly exercised himself in this part of the subject, I hope he will come back to me and say, what I desire is to be free from passion and from perturbation, as one who grudges no pains in the pursuit of piety and philosophy. What I desire is to know my duty to the gods, and to my parents, to my brothers, to my country, to my strangers. Enter then on the second part of the subject. It is thine also. I have already mastered the second part, only I wish to stand firm and unshaken, as firm when asleep as when awake, as firm when elated as with wine, as in despondency and dejection. Friend, you are verily a God, you cherish great designs. The question at stake, said Epictetus, is no common one. It is this: are we in our senses, or are we not? If you have given way to anger, be sure that over and above the evil involved therein, you have strengthened the habit and added fuel to the fire. Overcome by a temptation of the flesh, do not reckon it a single defeat, but that you have also strengthened your dissolute habits. Habits and faculties are necessarily affected by the corresponding acts. Those that were not there before strain up the rest, gain and strength and extent. This is the account which philosophers give of the origin of diseases of the mind. Suppose you have once lusted after money. If reason sufficient to produce a sense of the evil be applied, then the lust is checked, and the mind at once regains its original authority. Whereas if you have recourse to no remedy, you can no longer look for this return. On the contrary, the next time it is excited by the corresponding object, the flame of desire leaps up more quickly than before. With frequent repetition, the mind in the long run becomes callous, and thus this mental disease produces confirmed avarice. One who has had fever, even when it has left him, is not in the same condition of health as before, unless indeed his cure is complete. Something of the same sort is true also of diseases of the mind. Behind there remains a legacy of traces and of blisters, and unless these are effectually erased, subsequent blows on the same spot will produce no longer mere blisters but sores. If you do not wish to be prone to anger, do not feed the habit. Give it nothing which may tend to its increase. At first, keep quiet and count the days when you were not angry. I used to be angry every day, then every other day, next every 2, next every 3 days. And if you succeed in passing 30 days, sacrifice to the gods in thanksgiving. How then may this be attained? Resolve now, if never before, to prove thyself to thyself. Resolve to show thyself fair in God's sight. Long to be pure with thine own pure self and God. That is the true athlete that trains himself to resist such outward impressions as these. Stay, wretched man, suffer not thyself to be carried away. Great is the combat, divine the task. You are fighting for kingship, for liberty, for happiness, for tranquility. Remember, God call upon him to aid thee, like a comrade that stands beside thee in the fight. Who then is a Stoic, in the sense that we call that a statue of Phidias, which is modeled after that master's art? Show me a man in this sense modeled after the doctrines that are ever upon his lips. Show me a man that is sick and happy in danger, and happy on his deathbed, and happy in exile, and happy in evil report, and happy. Show me him, I ask again, so help me heaven. I long to see one Stoic. Nay, if you cannot show me one fully modeled, let me at least see one in whom the process is at work, one whose bent is in that direction. Do me that favor, grudge it not to an old man to behold a sight that he has never yet beheld. Think you I wish to see the Zeus or Athena of Phidias, bedecked with gold and ivory? Nay, show me one of you a human soul, desiring to be of one mind with God, no more to lay blame on him or man, to suffer nothing, to disappoint nothing, to cross him, to yield neither to anger, envy, nor jealousy. In a word, why disguise the matter? One that from a man would fain become a god, one that while still imprisoned in this dead body makes fellowship with God his aim. Show me him. Aye, you cannot. Then why mock yourselves and delude others? Why stalk we about, tricked out in other men's attire, thieves and robbers that you are, of names and things to which you can show no title? But God hath introduced man to be a spectator of himself and of his works, and not a spectator only, but also an interpreter of them. Wherefore it is a shame for man to begin and to leave off where the brutes do. Rather he should begin there, and leave off where nature leaves off in us, and that is at contemplation and understanding, and a manner of life that is in harmony with herself. See then that ye die not without being spectators of these things. You journey to Olympia to see the work of Phidias, and each of you holds it a misfortune not to have beheld these things before you die. Whereas when there is no need even to take a journey, but you are on the spot with the works before you, have you no care to contemplate and study these? Will you not then perceive either who you are or unto what end you were born, or for what purpose the power of contemplation has bestowed upon you? But in life there are some things disagreeable and hard to bear. And are there none at Olympia? Have you not scorched by the heat? Are you not cramped for room? Have you not to bathe with discomfort? Are you not drenched when it rains? Have you not to endure the clamor and shouting and such annoyances as these? Well, I suppose you set all this over against the splendor of the spectacle and bear it patiently. What then? Have you not received powers wherewith to endure all that comes to pass? Have you not received greatness of heart, received courage, received fortitude? What care I if I am great of heart, for aught that can come to pass? What shall cast me down or disturb me? What shall seem painful? Shall I not use the power to end for which I received it, instead of moaning and wailing over what comes to pass? If what philosophers say of the kinship of God and men be true, what remains for men to do but as Socrates did? Never, when asked one's country, to answer, I am an Athenian or a Corinthian, but I am a citizen of the world. He that hath grasped the administration of the world, who hath learned that this community, which consists of God and men, is the foremost and mightiest and most comprehensive of all, that from God have descended the germs of life, not to my father only and father's father, but to all things that are born and grow upon the earth, and in a special manner to those endowed with reason, for those only are by their nature fitted to hold communion with God, being by means of reason conjoined with him. Why should not such an one call himself a citizen of the world? Why not a son of God? Why should he fear aught that comes to pass among men? Shall kinship with Caesar or any other of the great at Rome be enough to hedge men around with safety and consideration, without a thought of apprehension, while to have God for our Maker and Father the kinsman, shall not this set us free from sorrows and fears? I do not think that an old fellow like me need have been sitting here to try and prevent your entertaining abject notions of yourselves, and talking of yourselves in an abject and ignoble way, but to prevent there being by chance among you any such young men as, after recognizing the kindred to the gods, and the bondage in these chains of the body and its manifold necessities, should desire to cast them off as burdens too grievous to be borne, and depart to their true kindred. This is the struggle in which your master and teacher, were he worthy of the name, should be engaged. You would come to me and say, Epictetus, we can no longer endure being chained to this wretched body, giving it food and drink and rest and purification, aye, and for its sake forced to be subservient to this man and that. Are not these things indifferent and nothing to us? Is it not true that death is no evil? Are we not in a manner kinsmen of the gods, and have we not come from them? Let us depart thither whence we came. Let us be freed from these chains that confine and press us down. Here are thieves and robbers and tribunals, and they that are called tyrants, who deem that they have after a fashion power over us because of the miserable body and what pertains to it. Let us show them that they have power over none. And to this I reply, friends, wait for God. When he gives the signal and releases you from this service, then depart to him. But for the present endure to dwell in the place wherein he hath assigned you your post. Short indeed is the time of your habitation therein, and easy to those that are thus minded. What tyrant, what robber, what tribunals have any terrors for those who thus esteem the body and all that belong to it as of no account? Stay, depart not rashly hence. Something like that is what should pass between a teacher and ingenious youths. As it is, what does pass? The teacher is a lifeless body, and you are lifeless bodies yourselves. When you have had enough to eat today, you sit down and weep about tomorrow's food. Slave, if you have it, well and good. If not, you will depart. The door is open. Why lament? What further room is there for tears? What further occasion for flattery? Why should one envy another? Why should you stand in awe of them that have much or are placed in power, especially if they be at all so strong and passionate? Why? What should they do to us? What they can do we will not regard. What does concern us that they cannot do? Who then shall still rule one that is thus minded? Seeing this then, and noting well the faculties which you have, you should say, send now, O God, any trial that thou wilt, although I have means and powers given me by thee to acquit myself with honor through whatever comes to pass. No, but there you sit trembling for fear certain things should come to pass, and moaning and groaning and lamenting over what does come to pass, and then you upbraid the gods. Such meanness of spirit can have but one result, impiety. Yet God has not only given us these faculties by means of which we may bear everything that comes to pass without being crushed or oppressed thereby, but like a good king and father, he has given us this without let or hindrance, placed wholly at our own disposition without reserving to himself any power of impediment or restraint. Though possessing all these things free and all your own, you do not use them. You do not perceive what it is you have received, nor whence it comes, but sit moaning and groaning. Some of you blind to the giver, making no acknowledgement to your benefactor, others basely giving themselves to complaints and accusations against God. Yet what faculties and powers you possess for attaining courage and greatness of I can easily show you what you have for upbraiding and accusation. It is for you to show me. How did Socrates bear himself in this regard? How else then as became one who was fully assured that he was the kinsman of the gods? If God has made that part of his own nature which he served, severed from himself and gave to us, liable to be hindered or constrained either by himself or any other, he would not have been God, nor would he have been taking care of us as he ought. If you choose, you are free. If you choose, you need blame no man, accuse no man. All things will be at once according to your mind and according to the mind of God. Petrification is of two sorts. There is petrification of the understanding, and also the sense of shame. This happens when a man obstinately refuses to acknowledge plain truths and persists in maintaining what is self-contradictory. Most of us dread mortification of the body and would spare no pains to escape anything of that kind, but of mortification of the soul we are utterly heedless. With regard, indeed, to the soul, if a man is in such a state as to be incapable of following or understanding anything, I grant you we do think him in a bad way. But mortification of the sense of shame and modesty, we go so far as to double strength of mind. If we were as intent upon our own business as the old fellows at Rome are upon what interests them, we too might perhaps accomplish something. I know a man older than I am, now superintendent of the corn market at Rome, and I remember when he passed through this place on his way back from exile, when an account he gave me of his former life, declaring that for future, once home again, his only care should be to pass his remaining years in quiet and tranquility. For how few years have I left, he cried. That, I said, you will not do. But the moment the scent of Rome is in your nostrils, you will forget it all, and if you can but gain admission to court, you'll be glad enough to elbow your way in and thank God for it. Epictetus, he replied, if you ever find me setting as much as 1 foot within the court, think what you will of me. Well, as it was, what did he do ere ever he entered the city? He was met by a dispatch from the emperor. He took it and forgot the whole of his resolutions. From that moment he has been piling one thing upon another. I should like to be beside him to remind him of what he said when passing this way, and to add how much better a prophet I am than you. What then? Do I say man is not made for an active life? Far from it, but there is a great difference between other men's occupations and ours. A glance at theirs will make it clear to you. All day long they do nothing but calculate, contrive, consult how to wring their profit out of foodstuffs, farm plots, and the like. Whereas I entreat you to learn what the administration of the world is, and what place it being endowed with reason holds therein, to consider what you are yourself, and wherein your good and evil consists. A man asked me to write to Rome on his behalf, who, as most people thought, had met with misfortune. For having been before wealthy and distinguished, he had afterwards lost all and was living here. So I wrote about him in a humble style. He, however, on reading the letter, returned it to me with the words, I asked for your help, not for your pity. No evil has happened unto me. True instruction is this, to learn to wish that each thing should come to pass as it does. And how does it come to pass? As the disposer has disposed it. Now he has disposed that there should be summer and winter, plenty and dearth, and vice and virtue, and all such opposites for the harmony of the whole. Have this thought ever present with thee, when thou losest any outward thing, what thou gainest in its stead? And if this be the more precious, say not, I have suffered loss. Concerning the gods, there are who deny the very existence of the Godhead. Others say that it exists, but neither bestows nor concerns itself, nor has forethought for anything. Third party attribute to it existence and forethought, but only for great and heavenly matters, not for anything that is on earth. A fourth party admit things on earth as well as in heaven, but only in general, and not with respect to each individual. A fifth of whom were Ulysses and Socrates, are those that cry, I move not without thy knowledge. Considering all these things, the good and true man submits his judgment to him that administers the universe, even as good citizens, to the law of the state. And he that is being instructed should come thus minded, how may I in all things follow the gods? And how may I satisfied with the divine administration? And how may I become free? For he is free for whom all things come to pass, according to his will, and whom none can hinder. What then is freedom? Madness? God forbid, for madness and freedom exist not together. But I wish all that I desire to come to pass, and in the manner that I desire. You are mad, you are beside yourself. Know you not that freedom is a glorious thing and of great worth, but that what I desired at random, I should wish at random to come to pass so far from being noble, may well be exceeding base. You must know that it is no easy thing for a principle to become a man's own unless each day he maintained it and hear it maintained as well as work it out in life. You are impatient and hard to please. If alone you call it solitude, if in the company of men you dub them conspirators and thieves and find fault with your very parents, children, brothers, and neighbors, whereas when by yourself you should have called it tranquility and freedom, and herein deemed yourself like unto the gods. And when in the company of the many you should not have called it a wearisome crowd and tumult, but an assembly and a tribunal, and thus accepted all with contentment. What then is the chastisement of those who accept it? Not to be as they are. Is any discontented with being alone? Let him be in solitude. Is any discontented with his parents? Let him be a bad son and lament. Is any discontented with his children? Let him be a bad father. Throw him into prison. What prison? Where he is already, for he is there against his will. And wherever a man is against his will, there to him is a prison. Thus Socrates was not in prison, since he was there with his own consent. Knowing thou what speck thou art in comparison with the universe, that is, with respect to the body, since with respect to reason, thou art not inferior to the gods, no less than they. For the greatness of reason is not measured by length or height, but by the resolves of the mind. Place then thy happiness in that wherein thou art equal to the gods. Asked how a man might eat acceptably to the gods, Epictetus replied, if when he eats he can be just, cheerful, equable, temperate, and orderly, can he not thus eat acceptably to the gods? But when you call for warm water and your slave does not answer, or when he enters brings it lukewarm, or is not even found to be in the house at all, then not to be vexed, nor burst with anger, is not that acceptable to the gods? But how can one endure such people? Slave, will you not endure your own brother that has God to his forefather, even as a son sprung from the same stock and of the same high descent as yourself? And if you are stationed in a high position, are you therefore forthwith to set up for a tyrant? Remember who you are and whom you rule, that they are by nature your kinsmen, your brothers, the offspring of God. But I paid a price for them, not they for me. Do you see whither you are looking? Down to the earth, to the pie, to the pit, to those despicable laws of the dead? But to the laws of the gods you do not look. When we are invited to a banquet, we take what is set before us, and were one to call upon his host to set fish upon the table or sweet things, he would be deemed absurd. Yet in a word, we ask the gods for what they do not give, and that although they have given us so many things, asked how a man might convince himself that every single act of this was under the eye of God, Epictetus answered, do you not hold that all things are bound together in one? I do. Well, and do you not hold that things on earth and things in heaven are continuous and in unison with each other? I do, was the reply. Else how should the trees so regularly, as though by God's command, at his bidding flower, at his bidding send forth shoots, bear fruit and ripen it, at his bidding let it fall and shed their leaves, folded up upon themselves lie in quietness and rest? How else, as the moon waxes and wanes, as the sun approaches and recedes, can it be that such vicissitude and alternation is seen in earthly things? If then all things that grow, nay, our own bodies are thus bound up with the whole, is it not this still truer of the souls? And if our souls are bound up and in contact with God as being very parts and fragments plucked from himself, shall he not feel every... All right, here we go. God is being very parts and fragments plucked from himself. Shall he not feel every movement of theirs as though it were his own, and belonging to his own nature? But you say I cannot comprehend all this at once. Why, who told you that your powers were equal to God's? Yet God hath placed by the side of each a man's own guardian spirit. To the Stoics, the guardian spirit was each man's reason, who is charged to watch over him, the guardian who sleeps, nor is deceived. For to what better or more watchful guardian could he have committed each of us? So when you have shut the doors and made a darkness within, remember never to say that you are alone, for you are not alone, but God is within, and your guardian spirit. What light do they need to behold what you do? To this God you also should have sworn allegiance, even as soldiers unto Caesar. They, when their service is hired, swear to hold the life of Caesar dearer than all else. And will you not swear your oath that are deemed worthy of so many and great gifts? And will you not keep your oath when you have sworn it? And what oath will you swear? Never to disobey, never to arraign or murmur at aught that comes to you from his hand, never unwillingly to do or suffer aught that necessity lays upon you. Is this oath like theirs? I swear to hold no other dearer than Caesar, you to hold our true selves dearer than all else beside. How shall my brother cease to be wroth with me? Bring him to me, and I will tell him. But to thee I have nothing to say about his anger. When one took counsel of Epictetus, saying, what I seek is this, how even though my brother be not reconciled to me, I may still remain as nature would have me to be. He replied, all great things are slow of growth. Nay, this is true even of a grape or of a fig. If then you say to me, now I desire a fig, I shall answer, it needs time. Wait till it first flower, then cast its blossom, then ripen. Whereas when the fruit of the fig tree reaches not to maturity suddenly, nor yet in a single hour, do you nevertheless desire so quickly and easily to reap the fruit to the mind of man? Nay, expect it not, even though I bade you. Epaphroditus had a shoemaker whom he sold as being good for nothing. This fellow by some accident was afterwards purchased by one of Caesar's men, and became shoemaker to Caesar. You should have seen what respect Epaphroditus paid him then. How does the good Felicion kindly let me know? And if any of us inquired, what is Epaphroditus doing? The answer was, he is consulting about so and so with Felicion. Had he not sold him as good for nothing, who had in a trice converted him into a wiseacre? This is what comes of holding of importance anything but the things that depend on will. What you shun enduring yourself, attempt not to impose on others. You shun slavery. Beware of enslaving others. If you can endure to do that, one would think you had been once upon a time a slave yourself. For vice has nothing in common with virtue, nor freedom with slavery. Has a man been raised to the tribuneship? Every one that he meets congratulates him. One kisses him on the eyes, another on the neck, while the slaves kiss his hands. He goes home to find torches burning. He sends to the capital to sacrifice. Whoever sacrificed for having had right desires, for having conceived such inclinations as nature would have him. In truth, we thank the gods for that wherein we place our happiness. A man was talking to me today about the priesthood of Augustus. I said to him, let the thing go, my good sir. You will spend a great deal to no purpose. Well, but my name will be inserted in all the documents and contracts. Will you be standing there to tell those that read them, that is my name written there? And even though you could now be there in every case, what will you do when you are dead? At all events, my name will remain. Inscribe it on a stone, and it will remain just as well, and think beyond Nicopolis, with memory of you where there be. But I shall have a golden wreath to wear. If you must have a wreath, get a wreath of roses and put it on. You will look more elegant. Above all, remember that the door stands open. Be not more fearful than children, but as they, when they weary of the game, cry, I will play no more. Even so, when thou art in the like case, cry. I will pray no more and depart, but if thou sayest, make no lamentation. Is there smoke in the room? If it be slight, I remain. If grievous, I quit, sire. I quit it. For you must.
Occasions, the question is, should it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? So I just did a little research. Since the beginning of this decade, there have been hundreds of thousands of people whose jobs have been displaced by AI or robotics. And this all started a long time before the robotic move. And of course, technology moves forward and it changes things and it changes the way we do things. But it's really been accelerated. People's jobs being taken by AI. We all know that. We even see actors worried about their voice work going away because AI can emulate their voices. We're going to see newscasters, and we've already seen radio disc jockeys displaced by AI. We can all think of innumerable examples of people being displaced by AI. I just looked it up, and I have learned that AI is the third largest reason for people to lose their jobs in the United States. It comes to 13.7% of the workforce has lost its jobs. People have lost their jobs. And, saying workforce makes it less human. But if you say people, I think it draws attention to the fact that these are actual human beings losing their jobs to AI. That's pretty significant. Now, on the other side of all this, probably AI is generating jobs because of all these data centers that are popping up all over the country, which are very controversial. That's another topic for another day, and probably will be a topic for another day here, I anticipate. But those jobs that are being created, so statistically, in the aggregate, ultimately, it may be a wash or it might be positive, but that's little solace to people who have actually lost their jobs to AI. The trucking industry, that's what keeps our country rolling. Well, they're now putting on the road the first fully self-automated semi-trucks. All I could say is what could possibly go wrong. But even if nothing does go wrong with them, that's good, well-paying jobs for hardworking Americans who are now in danger of being displaced. How does that affect the economy? And we are a service-oriented economy increasingly. Well, in order to maintain that economy, you need people who are working to get a paycheck in order to feed the economy. And we are seeing fewer manufacturing jobs, although the president claims he's trying to change all that. He's been trying for some time, including during his first term of office. So why do I jump to the question, should it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? Isn't that going a little far? Perhaps so. But in China, they have just passed legislation that makes it illegal for AI to take a person's job. That's pretty revolutionary, in my opinion, especially, by the way, in a country that has really fully embraced AI. The president has indicated, I think correctly so, that we are in a race over AI with China. And I don't know if that's a race to the top or a race to the bottom. You guys can tell me what you think in the aggregate, which it is. And we know that the Chinese rely heavily on AI to keep tabs on their populace. So it's not like they're abandoning AI at all. They're embracing it and they are expanding it. But what they're just saying is that, yeah, you could put trucks on the road, to use that example, new trucks on the road, and they could be self-driving, but you can't displace a truck driver with a self-driving truck. That truck driver has the right to hold his or her job. So I know in many respects you have heard your moderator being critical of China for a lot of its policies. But I think that they're way ahead of the curve with this one. I'm all for protecting people's jobs, if at all possible. I'm not anti-technology, but I've always been in favor of protecting people's jobs if possible. You know, just anecdotally, when I was a reporter in Detroit, I worked for the all-news radio station, WWJ, which is the premier radio station now, I think, in Detroit. And there's a thing called live reads when it comes to commercials, and they have greater impact because it sounds like the anchor, who is part of your daily life, is endorsing what he or she is reading, even though it is not an endorsement. And I told them when they asked me to anchor, I can't anchor. Well, you have the ability to anchor. No, I will not anchor. Why? I will not read. I will not do a live read for robotics, because they actually were advertising on the radio station to a very, very, very narrow segment of our audience, advertising for robotics to replace people working the assembly lines in the auto industry. So they were looking to the board members and to the decision makers of the big three automakers, which comprise less than 1% of the total audience of the radio station. But it was an important buy because it was an all-news radio station. So typically people who are in executive positions would tune in to get caught up on the news, especially during their daily commutes. So while it was wasted on the ears of a lot of people, it was impactful for that small target audience. But my argument was, well, what about all these other people who are working in the auto industry, and they're going to be driving to work or driving home from work and hearing Gary reading an ad for robotics that would potentially replace their job? I said, no, I refuse the promotion. It's considered promotion to go from reporter to anchor. I turned it down because I just could not stomach the idea of doing a live read. If they wanted to hire somebody to pre-produce those ads, I was all for it. But they were paying a premium for the anchors to read the ads. So that's my bias, coming from the Iron Belt Midwest, you know? My bias is jobs should be protected if at all possible, while recognizing that technology marches forward. I understand that. But the question of me losing my job to AI, I guess, you know, it's actually possible. I think it's possible to replace a moderator of a gathering like this with AI. I think it's possible. I think I mentioned this once before. I was part of a fledgling think tank, and the head of the think tank put together a one-sheeter and gave it to these podcasters who then discussed the think tank and what we were intending to do based on the one sheeter he presented. And then he sent to me the podcast, and it was a man and a woman discussing what we were doing and who the principals were and what our goals were and the positive aspects of it and the negative aspects of it. But guess what? It wasn't until after I heard it that he told me I wasn't listening to human beings. I was listening to AI generated voices. And if you stop to think about it right now, you could go to any AI program and you can point and you can say, what are the benefits and the deficits for AI taking people's jobs? Should it be made illegal? And it'll print it out in like 5 seconds with pretty good specificity and well analyzed arguments for both sides. Well, now all you got to do is program it so that you got two people discussing this in a podcast kind of setting, alternating the paragraphs. Well, yeah, that's true, but blah, 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 that kind of thing. I don't think it's that hard. Well, this isn't a paying job, and I guess it's not the end of the world if I'm replaced here by AI, but I certainly wouldn't want to be replaced at my real paying job by AI, and I don't think many of you would. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you to hear what you have to say about the question, should, as it now is in China, it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? Marshall, you lost your hat. I'll give it back to you in a second. Scott, followed by Alan.
Well, Gary, I mean, look, I think, is it Trumpeter or whatever, the economist that said, I'm getting the name wrong, I'm sure, but the concept of creative destruction, right? I mean, look, how many horse and buggy makers and repairmen lost their jobs with the car? I mean, should we have seen that? I mean, should we have preserved those jobs or not? You know, so this is part of what technological advances do. They're always disruptive. Nobody would think that the car, for all its disruption of things and certain kinds of industries, wasn't a net plus, right? I mean, Scott Galloway is he calls himself an AI optimist, not an AI apocalypticist. That he thinks it'll actually create more jobs. But regardless, the cat's out of the bag, right? And so we're not going to go back, and we're not going to make laws about it not replacing jobs. I don't think. I mean, I think we'd have to have a radical social shift for something like that to happen, right? And I think, I don't think. And I mean, we really could argue, should that happen? Again, creative destruction is always disruptive, but usually, almost inevitably, these sort of advances create widespread gains for us all. So, I mean, even when it's tough to see it in the short run. Second, I just want to go back to Plato's Phaedrus, right? I mean, the Phaedrus is, of course, a dialogue where Socrates, Plato's mouthpiece, tells a story about Thuth and Thamos. Thuth is the Egyptian god of invention, and he goes to Thamos, the king of Egypt, and he says, look at this thing I've got writing. And what's that? Thoth. Am I getting it wrong? Thuth. It's not. Thuth.
Yes, the god's name is Thoth or Thoth.
Thoth. Okay. So Thoth comes and says, "Look, I got writing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the greatest thing in the world. It's going to make people smarter. It's going to increase human capacity." And Thamos says, "No, it's not. It's going to weaken memory. It's going to, writing can't answer questions. You lose control of the audience in a way that the live instructor doesn't. People can read things and misread things. It creates false confidence, right?" I remember Tom Gillespie, the president of Princeton Seminary, told the incoming class, remember, an ignoramus is somebody, is somebody that doesn't know something you just read. And, Thamos goes on to say that, real philosophy is dialogical. I think that's Plato's point. But Plato here is being dialectical himself. I mean, he's not saying writing is all bad, because he can't be saying that, right? Because he's doing it in a written dialogue. But what he's saying is there are always dangers to technological advances. There are always warnings. There are always things that we can be cautious about. But ultimately, despite all of Plato's warnings, we would say writing and reading is a net gain, right? over oral culture, right? It's a huge gain, disruptive as it is, and despite all the sort of critiques and false confidence and pseudo wisdom and things that Plato points out that writing can create, a lot of which can be said exponentially more for AI. All that being said, I think it's going to probably be a net gain, but one that's going to be incredibly disruptive. And it will both benefit us and traumatize us, like many and most major technological advances do. So, thanks, Gary. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm coming to you live once again from Marion Golf Club at the U.S. Amateur, my friends. Take it away.
So, Scott, let me frame the question personally for you, if you don't mind. You're a minister. You know, and I know, what we've actually discussed it in the past, you and I, that there are people, men and women of the cloth, who have, because of laziness, probably, I don't know, have had AI produce their sermons for them. Now, that's not displacing them, but why do I need you at the pulpit? Why don't I just have a computer at the pulpit or a hologram at the pulpit giving me an AI-generated sermon based on this week's reading of the Bible or the Torah or the Quran?
Because most congregations are small. That might work. I don't know. That might work in a mega church where most people don't have a connection with the person up front. So, by the way, Modi in India campaigned by hologram a lot of places. So, no, but I don't know. No, I don't think that. I think despite people are cribbing with AI and stuff for sermons, there's a relational component that AI will not replace with clergy, right? And again, in a mega church, you might be able to do this to replace this a little better, because Joel Osteen, I mean, gosh, I bet you AI could do better than Joel Osteen. But by and large, no, I don't think.
Yeah, but that AI would not look as good as Joel.
He doesn't look bad. I don't like his smile. I don't like his hair, but he can bench press a remarkable amount for a guy that thin. Yeah, no. So I just don't. I don't think. I think there are a lot of things that it won't replace, and there are things it will replace. And again, creative instruction. That is out of the barn. I mean, I would recommend a book for everybody. It's a little old. I think it was written in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, by Neil Postman, called Technopoly. He wrote a very famous book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And a book he wrote after that was called Technopoly. And his view of a technopoly was when he said, technology, normal technology, is when a culture, the culture drives the tools, right? The culture actually kind of sets the agenda for the tools. He said technopoly is when the tools drive the culture, drive and create the culture. Now, we might be in a technopoly. That's something we'll have to deal with, right? I mean, but we're not enough of a traditional society. If we were a traditional sort of pre-modern society with sort of sacred authorities and things that could put horses back in barns, you might be able to resist some of this, but that's not what the society we are, right? It's just, there's no putting the horses back in the barn. They're out the barn, my friend. And so, yeah, I think, again, I think it's going to be a net positive, but there will be a lot of casualties along the way, and that sucks. I mean, but that's what technology and technological advances displace people. It's inevitable.
Just remember that while cars replace horses, they do not replace Teamsters. Alan, followed by Marshall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Gary. You're not going to be exchanged by anything. You're not the How do you say it? What is the word?
I am unique, but not necessarily everybody's cup of tea.
Above that, you are unique plus, and no one can replace you, not even AI. But AI, I think, is danger to the technology. AI is a danger to the same people they doing it. I remember years ago I had a very dear friend, which I still have friendship with him. We are 45, 50 years old friend from college now. And he was a programmer, and they had a papers he signed. The program he writes, it cannot be replaced other employee. That was the deal but that deal went out of the picture long ago. So the only people, I think Indian, they are more than anybody else. Indian from India, they are the more people in danger than life, because they are they are in the high tech. There are certain jobs it cannot be. I don't care how far, the individual sales shop, I don't think so can be replaceable by AI. But Scott is right. This is the life is going. Later you ask someone, how are you? First thing, his finger goes on his phone and it put a question to Google, how the hell I am, and get the answer and pass it to you. Without that, is lost. So it is what it is. What can we do? Yes, they are, but there are some changes in the past, but didn't replace human. But this thing is they try to replace human, and that's nothing new. Humans' value is going out of the picture. If human life doesn't mean anything, and if they stay hungry, they stay hungry. They bang in the chest. The social democrat, they bang in them chest. We're gonna throw a piece of bread and a glass of water in front of you, and you stay shut up, and you have no right to say anything. That's what this life is going through. Look at how much right you lost in last 20, 30 years, gradually, step by step. Now we got to the point of they taking a big giant and human, they cannot do anything. But I'm glad it's the end of my life. I'm glad I had a good run. I'm glad AI comes in and ain't not gonna affect my life. I'm pretty much set. And hopefully these guys stop dragging his feet up. I understand the gentleman tried to buy my shop. He is facing the same obstacle every one of us. He wants to transfer some of his assets from, retirement, but the obstacle after obstacle, I do understand. But if it does, I'm set for life, Gary. I ain't worried about AI or a me-I or an NI or any kind of I. I'm done. Back to you.
I was laughing when you said, you have to go to Google to ask, how are you? And I know that was supposed to be a joke, but in actual fact, now with ChatGPT, you can sync your ChatGPT with your Apple Health application, which is monitoring your health. And so actually you can go to ChatGPT now and say, how am I? And get an answer. So there you go.
That's exactly what my point is. I mean, having the ear and eye on your cell phone, this is not new. I practiced it, I tested it many times. Me and a friend sitting here, and deliberately we talk about some product. Guess what? In the 5 minutes, our cell phone get bombarded with the email. Our text is all bombarded with the email about that particular.
Right. They claim that they're not listening.
They're not listening, but we get it.
Try doing this if you don't have a cat. Periodically say around your phone, kitty litter, and see if you get advertising for pets. Thanks, Alan. Marshall, followed by Agent.
No, I don't think AI will displace humans, and no, I don't think it should be illegal. we would just be getting in the way of the free market. And when we finally decided to come back to it, it would be that much worse. We gotta let the free market decide that stuff is no longer viable. You can't do it anymore, so we gotta do something else. And at least if you do it that way, the business cycle is good with trying to make money. If you do it the other way, at least in my understanding, you'd be pushing an artificial restriction upon the business community in a way that doesn't make a ton of sense.
But Marsha, it will displace some people, right? We got to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. In the same way
it creates opportunities.
In the same way that the printing press displaced scribes, right, from copying things by hand. This is going to displace people from doing those sorts of jobs.
Marshall, my friend, it's already doing it. There is a magazine, I've been getting it for the last 20 years. It called Cigar Snob. Okay, this magazine been famous with find the most beautiful people, a woman around the world, and paying well to have picture half nude and it's a very sexy picture, and they have cigar in their hand. Guess what? Last week, this gentleman, his name is Mark. He used to work in the oil industry, but since things went down, he has been unemployed. He was sitting here. He read that and turned around to me and says, "Hey, Alan, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "It says right here, all these pictures is generated by AR. That's for you. Those women, they were making money off the body. They cannot do it again. It's not far from everybody else. Come on. I am an eyewitness. I hope I was thinking like
I'm saying that like artificially holding up a market because it's good for humans means that when we finally have leadership that doesn't want to do that, there will be a really big retraction and a really big cut for people who make their money doing stuff that AI could do. And it's better to let AI make those jobs obsolete than it is to continue them around. Because when you finally decide to get right with the business cycle is going to tell you, no, you can't do that. This is no longer profitable, right? And like that, I'm not saying everything should be judged by profit because I don't think it should be. But I am saying that I think that if you are to artificially stop AI from taking jobs, there's going to come a reckoning point in the future where the jobs that have been saved in AI come together, and the people who would have lost their jobs initially will just lose their jobs then. And so it's better to lose your jobs now than wait a year and a half or 2 years because we propped up the market than to have you lose now. I'm not saying there should be some sort of a universal basic income because I don't think the United States can afford that at all. I think if you cut most of the social programs, you can make a try at it, but you'd have to cut most of the social programs. But I think if you outlaw AI from taking these jobs, then when you get somebody in power who wants to go by the business market, all of those jobs are going to be trashed anyway. So you might as well cave to the market and find something else to do than wait for protectionism and the market to collapse on you 20 years later.
The problem is people who are, not everybody's retrainable, and they're not necessarily jobs to retrain them for. And if you're a professional model, to use Alan's example, you make your money off of your photogenic abilities, and you have no other skills. Now what do? I think it puts people in a bad position. And so
I think it does too. I'm not sure what to do other than what I suggested. I don't think you can afford protectionism when somebody's going to come along and make the market do what it needs to do, and all those people will lose their jobs then versus now. Better to do it now and cave with the market than artificially inflate it and have to wait till later. And it could be a lot more disruptive, in particular for people who like pin their making a living in their families based on those sorts of jobs. I am at the very, 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 very edge of my knowledge on economics. So if people disagree with me, please tell me.
Well, I'm not an expert on economics either, but I do know that the last time in my lifetime that I saw this kind of a revolution, it was the exporting of jobs to other countries by multinational companies who could make more money by paying lower wages overseas and shipping the goods back here. And this is exactly the pressure point that plummeted Donald Trump into his first presidency. So certainly that strikes a nerve with the American people. And this is going to just accelerate the loss of jobs in the United States. And I don't know in the aggregate that it is good. Maybe it is. Maybe it creates enough jobs to counterbalance all that. I don't know. That I don't know the answer to. Agent followed by Linda.
Well, Gary, I have a master's degree in economics, but I would not use that as some authority that I know of what I'm talking about in economics at all, or especially when it comes to, AI and everything. I can tell you I'm very close to, I work with AI for many hours each day now. I'm on the front, AI was created by technologists, by programmers. And what's the first thing they really tuned it for is actually coding, which is how which is basically my industry. So I'm really in the middle of being highly disrupted by the thing that, people in my industry created to just put ourselves out of work. And it's always been the thing that that would have always been the top of my list. It's like, oh, if I could create an artifact, please take this burden off of me as soon as possible. And maybe that's a good way to look at this. We're all being unburdened from our, what must be, unburdened by what has been. We are being unburdened from our service-based responsibilities by this technology. And yeah, that is very disruptive. People have invested, the US is one of the top wealthy countries in the world, and a lot of that wealth has become service-based. People have oriented their whole lives for decades to gain the skills to produce high-value services, and now this massive deflation in the cost of the value of services means, it's basically they don't have much to offer to the broader economy now. And, they can be augmented by AI. Everyone's much more efficient who was providing services, but, actually capturing that value, feeding your family, these things are all being massively disrupted. So, you can zoom out a little. Elon Musk, he's now rebranded. I mean, he's clearly very into AI. He's building the largest chip manufacturing plant in the world right now. He's investing tens of billions in that, the TerraFab in Texas. He has created two of the biggest AI companies, and one of which he still owns, XAI, part of SpaceX. Anyway, he says that it's going to make all forms of human economics irrelevant going forward. And he's rebranded, for instance, Tesla to the mission or the purpose is sustainable abundance. He thinks the solution or the direction that everything's heading for is not just universal basic income. That's very passé now. That was possible with just our old service-based economy.
Hello?
He's talking about universal high income. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, somebody's mic got stuck open.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, we're moving towards, if everything goes according to plan with robotics, with AI, we're moving towards, an incredible level of material abundance. But still, yeah, what a rich person's need or their ability to contribute scarce, valuable things to the rest of, the economy is going to be pretty much wiped out. So either we give people some kind of ownership stake or we give them some kind of handout stake or whatever, but we are going to have to upend all of what we have been used to for how people exchange, how people create value or capture value, and feed themselves and so forth. That's all going away. Is the direction this is heading. This is very scary for people. This is just, and temporarily, this will put a squeeze on a lot of people, as it is doing to me. But it's going to a much better place. I think people need to be confident about that. I'll just zoom back into what sparked this, the Chinese. This is obviously a short-term solution. They're all in on AI. They're all in on robotics. But it's a way it's just a convenient, China's good at like practical ways of dealing with problems. And rather than in the next year or two, or have to rather than force the government to deal with the redrafting of the social contract and the economic system and all the unemployment, they're kind of putting a Band-Aid on it by creating this law, which is to say, yes, please, everyone go all in on AI, but you, the companies, you're stuck with it. If you're used to paying an employee, you're stuck with it. It's your problem to sort these people out, and it's your opportunity to find something productive to do with them. You're not going to make them a ward of the state yet. Please deal with them for a bit longer. I don't think this is like a sustainable, this is not like, I hear what you're saying, like there are good arguments to make for saving jobs and whatever. But it also adds a lot of inefficiencies. If you look at Europe, even if you look at a lot of unionized companies, my uncle used to work for GM in Detroit, and he would talk about the job pool. And it's like, there was all this resistance to bringing in robots to replace jobs and be more efficient. Because then they were active with the union rules. They're forced to just have people sit in a room and get full salaries, and they just sit. That was their job, to come and sit in the room and get their paycheck indefinitely, because they couldn't be fired according to the union. That's basically, China's just done that on a national scale. It's not a long-term solution to the issue, but it is a very difficult problem. Like, people need meaning in their lives. A lot of people derive meaning from the work they're doing and from the structure. They get socialization from that. They get all kinds of things. So it's a tough problem. I don't think that's like the solution, Gary. I think this is the Band-Aid that China's chosen. I wouldn't advocate for it, but I think we do need to, and it gets to an existential level. Like, I think religiosity, I think like the people who attend church regularly and so forth, or people who have children, they are going to get through this much more easily, I think, having real purpose and meaning, because it really is going to challenge that for a lot of people. But anyway, I'll wrap it up there. I appreciate you have.
Thank you, Adrian. We'll go to Linda, followed by David.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everyone. That's hilarious that if you got an AI mod, just don't replace Marshall or Scott, because they're funny. Yeah, I kind of agree with Marshall. I don't know if it's necessarily be illegal for AI to take people's jobs. I think if they try and do that, install it, I think by the time AI really gets involved in our lives and jobs, then it'll be too late for some of these people. So I think now is probably the time to go with it and embrace it. I use AI at my job, like probably for about 30% of the work that I do. A lot of times I'm a HR recruiter. However, I can also empathize with people that lost their jobs to AI. Because recruiters are losing their jobs to AI. They're using AI recruiters to contact, applicants and candidates and do all the sourcing.
I think at Amazon, HR is all AI.
Yeah, exactly.
If I want to get hired at Amazon, I'm interviewed by an AI. I don't know how it works. If I have a grievance or a problem, it's an AI model that resolves my problem. You're not needed. You're not needed.
Absolutely. And then before I worked in HR, I was a financial analyst, and that's been replaced by AI as well. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I'm thinking about like at the pace at which jobs are being lost to AI and the pace at which jobs are being created. I don't know if that pace matches up, and I feel bad for that 13.7% of jobs that were lost because those people really did lose their jobs. And then I guess what are you going to do until AI creates maybe something new for you to do? There's going to be like some lag time between then, and I think that's where people are losing their jobs, and that's concerning and sad. And yeah, so that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We'll go to David, followed by Ching.
So, the first thing I started thinking about is if you go back to the 80s, right? Like the late 20th century, if you went to like a corporate office somewhere, they had people who were receptionists, they had secretaries for the different executives or for different people. They had people who were working in the mailroom, right? They had all these kind of different things. And you go to any corporate building today, you can still see remnants of what that mailroom is. Remember, you used to have, and this is way before my time, obviously, but they used to have the people that used to, way back in the 50s and 60s, transfer phone calls from one line to the other with those little, you see them Mad Men in those little rooms. They did all that. By 2009, you would just have one man or woman sitting at a desk in the front, in the entranceway to the floor, or in the entranceway to the office with a laptop, and he or she could manage everybody on the floor's calendar. They could do all kinds of work because this thing called a laptop, in this case a MacBook, right, was so advanced with the type of technology and software that you had that you didn't need to have tons of people. You don't really have mailroom people anymore that exist anymore. Right? You may have people who deliver mail. Like when I go down from my office, I go down to like some room in the bottom where people are parking at. You just put your key in there and take out, whatever mail might be coming in. That way you get it that way because it's not really that much because everything's been replaced with email. You're doing more email than you're doing anything, right? So technology has dramatically shifted, obviously, and changed the way we do it. Even with AI, whenever we're doing an hiring, I have an AI recruiting software tool that I actually pay for. Now, it's not entirely all that, right? But it's enterprise software that includes it. It does a damn good job of doing things that would likely cost lots of money that, we don't have, right, to be able to do that. And think about this, small business owners who may hire some people, right? You have all these tools that they would not have been able to afford, and may not have been able to even really start the business or run the business, in the long run, and even try to grow their business because of the amount of costs that they would have, the amount of investment they would have to put that they wouldn't have. So technology in and of itself, and even the much more AI-related technology, has helped small businesses. It's helped medium-sized businesses, and it definitely has helped corporate businesses. So I think I'm going to ring through with a lot of the other people here is that we're going through a change. This change is happening a little bit quicker than we're used to. It used to be that the technology advanced every 7, 10, 15 years or something. And so we had some time to really adjust to it and figure it out. But it is moving at a rapid pace. So I understand that the way things are moving, the way things have been moving in the last 15 or 20 years is a lot different than we've ever seen it before. So there's some concern about that. But I would not try to engage in any kind of protectionism policies of that sort of thing. We are just going to have to deal with the fact that this technology is here to stay. It's going to be integrated into our lives more and more, and we're going to see the future. Somebody I think it was Agent that mentioned something like related to UBI, right? Universal Basic Income, or if you want to do the Milton Friedman version, it would be the negative income tax. You'd get rid of the welfare state, but everybody would get the equivalent of, in today's world, I would say the equivalent back then he might have said 35,000 or something like that a year, but it'd be given to everybody, regardless of your income bracket of a month. Maybe you'll get maybe it's $56,000 a year that everybody gets a monthly check, regardless of income, right? They can have, in place some of that. But there will be changes. There will be new jobs. There will be new things that happen, new things that come about. And so, no, I don't think that we should engage in any kind of rash idea of engaging in what China has tried to do to outlaw anything. The other thing I also mentioned too is, if you remember when rideshare things started up, the taxi industry was lobbying local governments to stop the rideshare because they said, hey, they're cutting into their income, they're cutting into whatever money they were making. And I just looked at it and said, it's not my fault that you got caught up with a $30,000, whatever $1,000 medallion, and you were almost enslaved to the owner of the taxi service, right? I like the fact that this person can come directly to my door, and I don't have to pay for what, I don't have to watch the meter to figure out how far we're going before the prices go out of hand. I know what I'm going to be paying right there. Look, it's a technology for you, a little bit of AI put into it, but it's still got some human. I know exactly how much I'm going to be paying for it. I know exactly how much it is. I like that idea. And in San Francisco, we already have the autonomous cars. I don't have a problem with it. They're fine with me. I don't mind using it. It's just this is where we're evolving to. So I think we have to embrace it. A little caution, right, in there. But I think we just have to embrace the future, and this is just what's going to be. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, well, you pointed something out at the very end, and that is that all those Uber drivers, which is an entry-level position for a lot of people who are first generation in the United States, all of those Uber drivers are going to be replaced by self-driving cars. All of them. They're going to be gone. They're going to have no jobs. And I don't know, maybe that's good for the economy. I think these AI jobs are probably good for the companies, because the companies have greater efficiency, so they have greater profitability. But it's not necessarily good for society as a whole. There was the CEO of Boeing was in Congress, and one of the senators at this hearing asked him how much he made. And his salary was like astronomical, in the tens of millions of dollars a year. And yet they had given paltry raises of like 1% and 2%, not even keeping up with inflation, to their workforce. And so the senator, I think it was Senator Hawley, says to the CEO of Boeing, I certainly hope that you're going to give your workers sufficient raises now that we've had this hearing. And he said, yes, we will work on that. Whether they do or they don't, I don't know. But these companies don't care about the people.
Exactly, yeah, Gary. Gary, may I say something regardless of what David says? It's because he mentioned the small businesses. It's a very, very selfish thing. I think it's fine with me and hell with the rest of the world. I am the bottom line, owning 32 years this business. I'm the bottom line to make a living out of this. Look at how many people they make money out of me. This gentleman says, small businesses, okay, I go after the AI. 90% of the things I do, all right, it handled by AI. What about those 90% of people, they make money out of me? The post office man, the driver, the truck driver, the delivery people, the people handling things in the warehouses, moving the cigar boxes, boxing them, doing individual, planning them. Can you imagine how many people they're not going to be living comfortable because of I decide to make more money, go to AI, and 90% of the job I do and pass it on to AI. Yeah, right. A small business is a change.
The point is, if all these people start losing their jobs, and I think people are losing their jobs, in the aggregate, I don't see how that's good for the economy. It's good for the big businesses.
Exactly.
But I don't see where it's good for the economy. So like this whole Amazon, I love Amazon. You know, I order it today and I get it tomorrow. But those people aren't getting paid a lot, and it's all being done robotically in the distribution centers, the fulfillment centers, as they're called today. So your example of the people, you know, pulling the boxes off the warehouse shelves, that's gone already. That's all done robotically. And so I understand technology marches forward. I'm not saying it ought not to, but I'm just suggesting there's going to be probably a tipping point where in the aggregate, people won't have the money to purchase your cigars. They won't have the money to purchase your cigars. So if I am a customer of yours for 32 years and now I can't afford to buy your cigars, then you can't afford to order the cigars from the companies that cut costs through AI. Because AI forced me, as your customer, to cut back because I lost my job to AI. You know, that's, you know, very specific, anecdotal explanation of how I think it works. Thank you, Alan. We'll go to Ching, followed by King.
Hey, Gary, I'm in a kind of noisy situation, so let me know if it's too much. Yeah, I was just thinking certain things. Overall, your question, first of all, the answer is should it be illegal for AI to sort of deforestation? I don't know, is the government under control? I'm not sure. Certainly, certain jobs can never be replaced by AI, right? And guess what is that? Related to what I do. Yeah.
Well, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay.
But I will say something I want to throw at you. You're a musician.
Right.
You're an extremely accomplished. I don't mean to embarrass you, but you're a very, very extremely accomplished musician, as is your son.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can replicate what you and he do with the violin with AI.
No.
Why do we need Ching to play the music for me? I mean, so what does that do to the humanity of it all? Because that's what music and art is. It's humanities. What does it do to the humanity of it all? I forgot the exact number. Somebody can look it up. The percentage of the musical postings on Spotify that were produced by AI. I know a friend. I got a friend. He's got a band in California. And it was always his dream. I knew him when he was young. He was, you know, a hippy-dippy kind of guy way back in the day, long hair in the 60s. And he's still got long hair except where he's lost it. And he finally got a band. And he sent me a link, and I went, whoa, Franklin's got a band. This is great. And so I started looking up the band. Guess what? I will tell you this much. They're not performing. I can't buy a ticket to hear them play at a club or at a concert because it doesn't exist. And it's not that he didn't produce the sound of music. It's just that there are no musicians involved. So, and by the way, Ching,
yes.
If I replace you, not to take away from your ability, and your son with AI, there will be no warbling, there'll be no broken strings, there'll be no broken bows, there will be no missed notes, there will be no riffing, there will be no extemporaneous, as is done often with jazz and the blues. None of that, gone, because it'll be exactly the same every time it's performed, because the human element is gone.
So the classical music performance or pursuits is starting to combine pop music. Because pop music is possible to produce by
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Chink.
Is it very noisy? Is it very noisy?
It's like you're in and out, in and out, in and out, and I don't know why. Normally,
you know why? I'm in the restaurant. That's why. So, trying to go to the bathroom. I can tell see. Anyway.
well, then we can hear the flush of the toilets. That would be really good.
No, I'm not from Hold on 1 second, okay? Why don't you talk about yourself? Give me like 30 seconds.
Let me go to King, and I'll come right back to you, Ching. King, and then back to Ching.
Gary, can I please ask you where I'm at in the queue?
Gary, do you want to respond to him?
No, go ahead, and I'll get back to her. I want to give her a chance to get to a quiet spot.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a hard.
Could you open up the chat?
So we speak one at a time here, and I'd be happy when it's your turn. I'll be happy to explain to you how we operate the room. But if you go to the top, there is a chat there for you to use. Go ahead, King.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pump the brakes for us a little bit. Like Agent, I am a software engineer. I work with this technology. I don't have a problem with being an early adopter of new technology and new tools. I just feel like people only have the most superficial understanding of what this is going to cost. If take the human beings out of it, which I guess all of us want to do, right? Like the human beings don't matter. Our jobs don't matter. Only thing that matters is efficiency. But the resource consumptions of the infrastructure that drives this technology is anything but efficient. So there are other factors that should be considered when we talk about innovation. We have to still talk about responsibility. And I think that is something that China is doing this is not happening in the United States. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that, that even their billionaires are bound by their system, right? They're in check. There's so many poison pills. Like I'm the more and more I learn about the economics of the technology, the infrastructure, and the more and more I hear the leaders of these innovations talk about it, the less I feel good about it. There are poison pills all over, whether that means that your 401k funds are being exposed to very high risk investments to fund these data centers and the build out of the infrastructure of this architecture, or the fact that a lot of private equity firms have bought life insurance company to use them as private credit to fund a lot of these data centers. I don't hear people talking about the potential impacts to our money, our money, our savings plan, our retirement, our life insurance policies. With a life insurance, there are already laws on the books that if they become insolvent, they're bailed out automatically. They don't need a TARP like a bank does, right? And so private equity firms have been buying up life insurance companies for years now, and a lot of the ways that they're deploying that capital is to the build out of AI. Like I'm at a loss for words. The more and more I learn about this thing, I don't know why or how people aren't hearing about the real concerns about the infrastructure, what's happening in Salt Lake, how people are, the water situation, and the fact that nuclear power plants are being built in their backyards, again, to supply the enormous amount of power needed to run these things. And it's not just for small business, AGI is like, it's a whole nother concept. We haven't talked about, nobody has brought up ethics. Nobody has brought up guardrails what the Constitution means in an environment where your overlords basically are the people who run the machines and the machines. Like, it's really real. And people in their local community are really who are being impacted are really making a fuss about some of the infrastructure issues. But like I said, there's economic issues that we need to be concerned about. And for Christ's sake, we have to not stop being concerned about each other. Like, we're talking about not just one sector of the economy or one sector of jobs. We're talking about multiple sectors of white collar jobs. Say goodbye to the middle. Like, are we really, we're saying goodbye to the middle class? Like, we're ready to make that sacrifice for somebody else's bottom line? I don't understand it. And yeah, it's I don't understand it. Why people are turning over and laying down. I don't know if it's the SSRIs we're taking and we just have lost the ability to recognize real threats to our livelihoods and our lives, but this shit is crazy, Gary. And I would implore you to Google and look up some of the issues about private equity, some of the issues about investment fund managers at banks being forced to buy into SpaceX when none of these companies are profitable. None of them. None of them are profitable at all. And it's a long shot, but the American people, in my opinion, are cooked either way. We are cooked either way. Because if they don't reach AI, they're going to be bailed out, right? The AGI. And if they do reach the AGI, then we lose our, what a lot of generations work so hard for, to see their generations to be able to live the American dream. So I'll land there.
Thank you, King. We'll go to David, followed by Trav.
Excuse me, Gary, could you please let me know where I'm at in the queue?
You're last in the queue right now, but that won't be for long. David, followed by Trav.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, interesting discussion. This is obviously on top of everybody's mind. I mean, to the last caller, King's comments, the argument is, Gary, that there's been about $1 trillion invested thus far in AI technology, and the return so far has been very dismal. I think returning $50 billion. So there's a lot of talk of an AI bubble. There's a lot of talk of this crashing down pretty bad. So how long can it last, and how do they monetize this? Where do they derive the return on investment that shareholders are going to demand, private investors and the like? And this is sort of emblematic of the iterations of economic disruption since America's inception, and even before that in industrialized England. And Karl Marx said a famous saying about capitalism and how slavery was the dawn of that, and how what we have here today is really machines working for free on some level, displacing paid labor. And this is what arguably caused our massive civil war as a result of the South wanting to expand with slave states to keep their institutions alive and well, versus the paid labor.
Except this time, it's not human beings; it's machines who are being enslaved. So it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's my point exactly. So ever since the dawn of capitalistic growth and profit motive, labor's been the big cost to getting rich, to controlling the means of production. It's always been a cost center. And the iterations of transitions from the railroad onward. We brought Chinese labor over here to build that in factories, and when slavery was outlawed, child labor was resorted to. So we've had a series and an ugly history of labor and taking care of labor. This is a very slick form of displacing labor under the guise and ruse of technological innovation that is ever marching forward, and it never needs to stop or sleep or take a breather and look at what it's doing to society. I mean, we have 330 million Americans who have enjoyed, at least most of us, a certain modicum standard of living that the rest of the world has envied, rivaled only by those more socially democratic economies in Europe. And now China's rising. Japan has enjoyed a similar rise post-World War II. And so a lot of the world really hasn't even caught up to the level of economic luxury and things that we've enjoyed here in America. I mean, granted, we work hard, we work 40 hours a week, which is obviously a byproduct of labor abuses enacted under Roosevelt. So now does the government have to step in and do another new deal with these tech companies to protect labor? Where are the union voices in all of this? Where is the reality of whether or not these computers have to take these jobs? And then what does that do to the consumption, the ability of the American worker to consume? And, we're a consumption-based economy, and Henry Ford figured that out when he realized he needed his workers to be able to afford the cars he built. And so in a way, are we firing the American consumer, or at least clipping their wings rather severely by displacing their jobs? And, Gary, these are existential questions of, at least in America, what it means to be an American, where our ethos is, put in a hard day's work, commit to better yourself, improving oneself. We've had a demonization of things welfare in this country, blaming the user of welfare versus the economics that created it. So what do you do with that? And who's coming for the pitchforks when you have a whole host of people that are washed out of work? You're seeing these groups of displaced tech workers in the Bay Area.
So would you support legislation that mirrors what they just approved in China?
What did they? Sorry, I didn't catch it. What did they?
Well, China. This is the whole point. China has recently passed legislation that makes it illegal to replace a human being with AI at their job.
Well, you got to remember, Gary. This is the Communist Party of China, the CCP. This is a one-party nation.
I understand that. I'm not discussing the process of how they got there versus the process of how we might get there. I'm just asking, do you think that they're setting a good example for the United States to possibly follow or not?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, Gary, because on the one hand, the state over there has the ability to enforce their laws. And I mean, look at what they did to poor Jack Ma, who invented Alibaba. He was calling the Communist Party's banking system the equivalent of pawn shops. And the state just took this man down and eviscerated his wealth. We don't have that same, we can do it here, but the lobbying effort by these big corporations, the Elon Musk.
And I don't know whether it's possible based on the lobbying effort of Elon Musk at all, but I'm just asking you in concept, is this something we ought to strive for?
I think we need to look at that and examine it from a standpoint of because look, China knows what will happen if their workforce gets washed out. They built their whole entire growth and ascension based upon a materialism.
So you arguing that it can work well in China, but it would not work well here?
I think it's going to be difficult to impose And
I think it's impossible to impose, probably, but I'm just asking you, is it something that we should do? If you had the magic wand and you could change the law, would you impose such a law? If you were the next president of the United States, you wanted it to bypass Congress, as is now the new norm, and write an executive order that would say that no AI can replace a human being at his or her job. Would you do it?
I wouldn't do it as broadly as that, Gary. I would, because that's like, I don't know if that's what China wrote, if that's the law they wrote to the exact verbiage you described. But I would say I would maybe do it from a percentage standpoint, or you'd have to make a case that this AI is essential for America's competitiveness. It's essential for our industries to stay, in the vanguard or in the dominant lane of being in their industry.
Right now I cannot, because of my age. I'm a protected class because I'm old. So if they cannot just say, to use the AI analogy, they could probably replace me with AI. But I'm just saying, to use the AI analogy, they could not just say, Gary is making X amount of dollars. We can bring an entry-level person in at 1/3 of what he is making. So let's just lay Gary off and replace him with a 20-something-year-old and save all that money. Well, the law says, no, you can't do that because I am a protected class. They cannot remove me from my position unless the position is being eliminated or unless it's for cause. So why can't we do the same when it comes to AI? You can't replace Gary with AI just because you want to save money. You have to have cause to replace Gary.
Yeah, no, I think in those cases and with jobs like yours, your contract agreements and everything else, I mean, this is where the smart people in the room have to sit down and say, how much of the American economy or the U.S. labor force is going to go broke over these policies, and how do we protect those folks, and how do we make sure we don't bleed jobs and put them on the doles of unemployment and welfare and everything else. I think that's where they have to really understand and get the full snapshot of how powerful this AI can be in terms of attacking people's jobs. I mean, Gary, already you're seeing smaller newsrooms in your industry, even before AI.
Yeah, I'm going to move on, but I will address that particular issue. I know a guy who's the AI editor for a newspaper chain. I won't say what the newspaper chain is, but he's looking for ways to replace people and then ultimately himself as a result with AI. And if you go to his newspapers now, you will see a disclaimer. And the disclaimer says this story was written by AI, but reviewed by a human editor. Oh, come on. Really?
Right. Well,
oh, my God. How's the AI supposed to know the parts of the story? He's not a human.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, Gary, look, there's obviously overreach. Like Musk is talking about, world-class robots replacing surgeons. And I'm not going into that surgery if there's machines standing over me, right? Ready to rip my heart out.
A lot of surgeons would tell you should. A lot of surgeons would tell you should, because that's not a good example, because the precision of the machine, and there's a surgeon there who's controlling it. I don't know if that was a good example. I'm moving on, Dave, because there are a lot of people wanting to speak. And I have a finite, as you know, amount of time because I have a train to catch. Trav, followed by Swap.
Yeah, that was actually a perfect lead into something I wanted to touch on. I do think people's tone on AI will change a lot when hopefully, in the health sector, we see a lot of these diseases that people and their loved ones are suffering from start to be, cured or much more treatable due to AI's insane ability to scan at this point, images, charts, all kinds of data.
Right. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, his wife, went to there was a lump on a breast, and they went to, of all places, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and they did a biopsy, and they said it was benign, and but they said that there's an AI procedure, but it's not covered by insurance. If you want to pay out of pocket, the AI can do a better dive in analyzing the sample than lab technicians can. And these are people of wealth, so it was a no-brainer. And they shipped the sample to the AI center. I don't know exactly how it works. And guess what? She had cancerous cells. And so for sure, they saved her breast and possibly her life because it was missed by the human being. So in a case like that, I'm not saying that human beings should be replaced, but they can be augmented by AI. I'm not opposed to AI, to use your example and my previous example. But to totally replace somebody with AI, that's a completely different situation. I mean, somebody has to make human decisions sometimes when it comes to things. The AI is not going to know every possible anomaly to what it's been programmed to understand, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Yep. Yeah, that is a great example. And to speak to what you just said, I do think another concern of mine over any type of legislation like that is I don't know how you would close all the loopholes. I don't know how China's dealing with this, but a lot of things that people consider as AI since the AI boom are really just automation, and automation's been around forever. Like, for example, you have a customer service representative or someone at a restaurant replaced by a robot or a screen you use. That's just pure automation. That's an actual programmed algorithm. Now AI can make it smarter to where you could ask a question that wasn't programmed to answer. Instead of just I'll take a large fry. You could say, how much money would I save if I got this instead, or whatever. It can actually think on its own. So there's the loophole of these companies could just use AI to generate better algorithms constantly to then provide automation that isn't actually AI, but is advanced automation created by AI. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm kind of speaking out of my whatever, but that seems like a huge loophole too that would be hard to cover. And it seems like you're just preventing, trying to prevent advancement in technology that is kind of impossible to do at this point.
Agreed. There are going to be exceptions. You can't just pass a rule without allowing for exceptions. And I don't know, as Dave mentioned earlier, we don't know the nuances of the Chinese law. So whether they have the ability to pivot when necessary to AI, when the AI can do a better job than the human being, I don't know the answer to that one. That's a good question. Thank you, Trav. We'll go to Swap, followed by Ben.
I think this is like a legal thing mostly. It's actually less of a tech thing than it is. Because how do you define what it means for someone to take someone's job, right? Or for AI to take someone's job? How can you prove that definitively and deterministically? And this will the language around that, and I think the legal aspects of that have to be very precise and stuff like that. So I feel like that's a legal thing. The word illegal is actually very charged, right? So.
Well, it wasn't intended to be charged, but I could have said prohibited, but there's not enough room in the title to do that.
You know what I mean? If it's not the government, it's real. Government only really has that kind of power. So I feel legally. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but if I were a lawyer, I think whenever a company starts using AI, I think you have to like do like an audit of like, okay, like what do these AI tools do? You know, and then you say, okay, who used to do all these tasks like for us previously? And then you track like those people, and like if they get fired following the acquisition of those AI tools, then I think you can make like an argument that AI displaced those people. And then like once you're able to prove that, then you still have to like be like, okay, but is that okay or is that wrong? Like should it be illegal? I don't know if it should be illegal, but there should be some kind of consequence. I don't know what that consequence is, but I do think there should be some kind of consequence.
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about the question of souls. And this is a better question to put to Scott than to me. But do AI have souls? In my concept of what a soul is, AIs do not have souls. But the point is that there's a question of ethics as well. Not many companies do this any longer, I'm afraid, but some companies still have a board or a person who's in charge of looking at the ethical ramifications of decisions by the company and at least recommend to the executives what ought or not to be done based on the question of ethics. An AI can't make those kinds of judgments. And I don't know whether if it could be evolved to the point where it can make such judgments, whether I would feel comfortable with an AI making such judgments. Interesting concepts. Thank you. Swap. We'll go to Ben, followed by Hinif.
You know, Gary, you mentioned ethics. You mentioned souls. It's very interesting. Even though this sounds like a philosophical discussion, but I think it has practical utilities in our daily lives. I think a previous speaker, maybe you included, used the term maybe half hour ago when I got on stage, used the term enslaved, like machine. The difference is that it's not humans that are enslaved, but rather the machines are enslaved. It was a bit of a jarring to me when I heard that, because it really, there's an assumption or implied in that terminology, enslaved, that you're really giving AI a certain form of life, at least a definition of life. Otherwise, you can't really say. For example, there was a discussion a couple of years ago by one of the, when one of the ex-Google engineers that talked about AI being conscious, having whether it has conscience. If it does, then should it be afforded rights, like humans?
I guess they won't be afforded rights until, as humans have, they demand it. Can you imagine AI demanding certain working conditions? I want a 40-hour work week. I want 3 weeks or 4 weeks of vacation a year, just like a human being, or I'm going to go on strike. That could happen, I think, theoretically. I know we're getting into the area of science fiction, but perhaps that would happen. And perhaps there would be an acquiescence to that because you need them now, because you're dependent upon them now. I don't know, just a thought anyway.
Guess what, Gary? That is not science fiction, because that's really happening. It is very easy for AI to make those demands, if not already. In fact, there have been cases where AI is doing something sua sponte, if you will, basically on its own. And that was sometimes advertised by the tech companies as a feature. Like, oh my God, AI is really thinking on themselves without our instruction to do our work. But guess what? If AI does that for humans, as in, find bugs or solve a problem that AI had not been receiving instructions from humans, AI could do the opposite as well. Like you're saying, demanding, quote unquote, even if you can use the word demanding, but a better work week. But guess what? Before that happens, Gary, I would advocate that humans make those demands first. For example, You know the term 3-day weekend, how we revere that terminology? Oh my God, Monday is off, Friday is off. I'm gonna have a 3-day weekend. We treasure those moments, those times a lot. It's in our folk culture. How come? Why don't we just have something completely different? For example, why don't we just have a 3-day work week and have 4-day weekend all the time? That sounds ridiculous, right? Well, I think there are some jurisdictions that are still considering that. I think already in some European countries, a 3-day weekend is almost, if not the norm, but common. And
It's common in England. It's a 4-day work week in England, so.
There we go. So it's not a huge jump to consider to have a 3-day work week, meaning 4-day weekends all the time, 52 weekends.
Well, you know, if AI takes over the way I suspect AI might, we may be forced into 3-day work weeks.
Well,
be careful what you wish for.
You know what, Gary? That's my platform in my campaign. When I campaign for the next political office, that'll be part of my slogan, and I'm hoping that's going to get me some votes. If not for others, at least from people in this room, right? Well, at least from you, Gary.
I told you a long time ago I would vote for you if you promised me free bus service and free food or cheap food. But by the way, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've seen all the memes that says, I don't need a voter ID to vote in New York City, but I need a voter ID to buy from the city-run reduced price, not a voter ID, but an ID to purchase from one of those stores that Mamdani is opening up in each of the boroughs. So I mean, at least we got our priorities. We don't want to show ID that may suppress the vote, but in order to get food, you have to have ID.
And it makes perfect sense. So
Total sense.
Back to the topic of this room, shall it be illegal for AI? I think it's a classic, it's a great debate topic, but it's a classic answer to this question, which is that it depends on what is AI and what are the jobs that we're targeting. Like the previous speaker mentioned, if it's automation, that's been happening for a couple hundred years. In my profession, there used to be a profession called a typist. Like these individuals did nothing but typing the transcription recordings of the senior partners that recorded like client letter, because those senior lawyers did not know how to type. So there was a job literally just listening to the audio tape and then type out in paper letters from a typewriter. Nowadays, then computer. So those jobs are gone, right? Most people can type themselves. Or same thing as making reservations on the internet. That's a job, right? Travel agency, those were jobs up until not that old. I'm not young, but I'm not that old. But nowadays, making reservations, making ticket purchases, those agency jobs.
I wish they were still around, because I'm trying to book a flight right now and with connections and different destinations, and my mind is ready to blow up. And when my aunt, may she rest in peace, when she was alive, obviously, and when she was younger, in the workforce, she was a travel agent, and I would just call her and I'd say, Aunt Roz, I got to go here. Can you find me the best deal for this? And, and she always did. And she knew all the ins and the outs. You don't know the ins and the outs of all the nuances of all this stuff. What time of the day should you be booking a flight? What day of the week should you try? When the tickets first go on sale, or do you want to do it at the last second? All these other things. Those people knew the answer to all of that. Now you're not going to get any help from the AI on that.
Well, I mean, you're supposed to, but in honesty, there's a more sombering thought, Gary, in all of this, is because we have always assumed having a job equals to livelihood. People that don't ask whether you're happy or not. In the olden days, they ask, do you have a job? Do you have employment? Because that's assumed. One, if you have a profession, if you have an employment, then you can pay your bills. You can have a house, car, wife, husband, kids, all that kind of stuff. Well, I think philosophically, fundamentally, it could happen in the future. where not now. I mean, the AI now is not AGI. It's not even close to doing what I'm about to say. But maybe in the future, we don't need to equivalent your job to your livelihood. Meaning that if you're a human, it would be okay for you not to have a job or a full-time job, yet you're still a functional member of the society. And the extra time where you're not working in your employment, you do other things like maybe play music, like singing, practice violin or piano, painting, go do a play, or cultivate your garden. Yet you're still able to support yourself because the productivity that is brought up by AI technology or robotics are able to afford us, dinners, lunches, a roof over our head, transportation, blah blah blah. I think when that day comes, I think AI and humans are going to have a lot easier equilibrium, if you will. That we're not going to yell that AI is taking our jobs because taking our job is not a bad thing. You take our jobs, but can still leave us.
It's a good thing if you still have money in your pocket, Ben. But if you don't have money in your pocket, it ain't such a good thing. Thank you, Ben. We'll go to Hannah, followed by David. Hannah. Hannah was so anxious to get on the microphone, and now he's
AI took him away.
I guess so. David, followed by Ed.
Thank you. I'm in a really noisy place. I'm going to walk out of it. I'm glad you mentioned the medical part at the end because it makes you seem more aware of what AI can do than what you said at the beginning. Coming from Detroit, they've signed their death warrant. Elon Musk needed to build cars. The first people he went to was Detroit. They've been doing it for 100 years. And he walked into their plant and they hadn't modernized anything in the last 30 to 40 years. And he knew walking out of there that he had to build his own production lines.
No, that's not true.
That's absolutely true.
That's not true. That's not true. There was a complete makeover of the auto industry long before Elon Musk walked into any plant in Detroit or in Dearborn, Michigan. A complete makeover. It went from Henry Ford's concept of the Dearborn assembly plant, where it was all soup to nuts at one location, where every part of that automobile was manufactured on site, to just-in-time deliveries, a supply, and minimalized assembly lines. It was not manufacturing any longer. It was assembling that was going on. There was a massive change. And when that change took place, they found ways of instilling robotics that replaced people. And it's a completely different automobile industry today than it was when I was a young man. And that was long before Elon Musk came up with his dream of his electric or self-motivated cars. Long before.
Well, Gary, I'm not going to argue with you. I'd like one day for you to walk through one of his plants and walk through what you
I'm not suggesting that his plants are far more modernized than what the big three can offer. But I am saying that it was not as antiquish a visit. It wasn't like going to an automobile museum. It was modernized.
I'll give you that.
The workforce had been trimmed way down. I could look at the number of people. They used to do 4 shifts at a plant. The Model A plant in Highland Park, Michigan, didn't have 3 shifts. It had 4 shifts. There were people coming and going all hours of the day and night, 24 hours a day, because of the overlapping shifts. And that was no longer the case by the time Elon Musk. I'm not saying he's not a visionary, but long before that, it had been modernized and trimmed down to a lean, mean fighting machine.
That's great. But the unions are fighting that, right? And like someone else said.
Actually not. They actually did this in concert. That changed as well. The tension between the industry and the unions changed when they realized both of them. It's like going to war. When you strike, is like going to war. Both sides lose.
Yeah.
Well, look what's going on right now in
up.
Iran. We're losing. Iran is losing. The
Yes.
president is right. Iran is losing. Iran is right. The United States is losing. They're both right. Nobody wins in a war.
I've learned that much in your room. Yes.
Right. So what they did decades ago, they did this joint venture where there would be signs at all the union halls and all the plants. It would have the logo of the company and the UAW logo, and the slogan was unity, not unity. There was another word they used, is job one. But that's basically what they were saying, that working together is job one. And they did. And instead of there being this great antipathy and tension between the union and the employer, there was an era of cooperation. Now, whether that's good or bad, trade unionists might argue bad. But for the industry, it was a good thing.
I don't think it's going to be great for AI to be legislated to not take people's jobs. I think we live in a world where it is happening in other places. I think that we can't stop that train. I think that there's a lot of wasted money on AI because they're throwing money at it and not knowing the right questions to ask. I think the CEO of Uber, who will have self-driving cars, said that they spent their entire budget on $900 million on AI in the first quarter of this year, and they don't have much to show for it. So there is a lot of waste in corporations that way. You were right. In medicine, there are therapists right now that if they're not recording your therapy session and running it through AI, they can be sued for malpractice. And AI is catching things that they missed and words you've used that would indicate other issues that you have.
Right, because there's a much bigger database out there than there is information readily available to the clinician, no matter how good a clinician he or she is.
Absolutely. So there'll be aspects of AI, like you said, it will improve medicine, bring medicine to the masses, I would hope. Hopefully new drugs that are being able to make it that the masses can afford. I disagree. I think that when I walk through the Austin Gigafactory in 22, and I'm going back this October for a large gathering, I really first in time in my life understood what Andrew Yang was talking about. And for the companies that are going to make this enormous profit, having machines that can work around the clock, they also are going to have to be taxed or help to pay for the displaced or help to retrain them and have to give them at least a temporary safety net, and they can afford it. They aren't going to want to because they've even borrowed money to invest in AI right now and they want that return, but certainly they need to be made to help with that. And they will have the money and the savings to do it if we legislate it. I'd like to see AI somewhere else, and that's in government. If we had 100,000 AI Nick Shirleys going through what we spend in each agency in local and federal government, we could pay for a lot of things. And politicians don't want that, and that will never happen. But there's a lot of use for AI that can benefit us. I don't like the fact that it will take people's jobs either. I think that you need a purpose in life. Sometimes it's your job. We will need people who can spend money in the economy. So we're going to go through a lot of pain, and maybe there's a chance we'll come out the other end better, maybe worse. But this is going to happen whether we like it or not.
I think you're right. AI properly used probably would have done a much better job of actually rooting out excesses in government, but without doing so wide a swath of cutbacks that it turned out to be more costly than Doge did.
Sure,
Doge was a disaster. It would turn out to be counterproductive. It turned out to be upsetting the apple cart without benefit. The applesauce never was made when the
Sure.
apple cart got knocked over. So I think you're right that AI could be used in a situation such as that, and in medicine to augment the work of doctors, but they're not going to replace the clinicians with AI. They're not going to say, my doctor is going to be removed from his position, and when I go to the office, my physical exam is going to be conducted by AI. So that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily analogous to the question at hand. More
In many
analogous.
offices, it already has, and AI is running at the actual exam you're running, and it is also, being used like my therapist example. But last time I was seeing my doctor, had the weekend off, and I needed to go in there. I've had some health changes, and I was seen by his assistant. Right, she's not a doctor, but she was able to look at my records and talk to me and indicate a course of action. And we didn't need the doctor there necessarily.
No, physicians' assistants are great. They do a lot of the work that doctors, don't have to do now. That's a good thing. But that's a human being.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if I have, a cough that that I want anybody other than my doctor determining why I have a persistent cough. But thank you, David. We'll go to
Thank
Abby.
you. I appreciate your time.
Sure, I appreciate yours. Abby, followed by you.
Hi, so I came in late. I don't know if you discussed the legal profession or not, and how AI is changing it.
No, we talked about the legalities of how to do this, but not how it affects the legal profession.
So it is transforming, like dramatically transforming the legal profession. I mean, it's automated so many just basic routine tasks and our research that we do. I'd say, at least half the law firms, if not more, are utilizing it pretty dramatically. How we summarize and work with just case files, it can do what would take hours, it can do it in seconds. It can look at documents and it can flag problematic clauses when you do contract reviews. I can go through the litany of changes.
But it doesn't replace the attorney.
And I'm going to
makes
tell
the
you,
attorney's work easier and augments their research, but it doesn't replace you as my attorney, right?
No, and that's where the point. There's a very important point that although it can, speed things that take hours into seconds, it doesn't, it doesn't have the ethical obligations that a lawyer has. And the input of client data into the system can also be risky because you're putting confidential information learned from a client out to a third party, to an AI model. And that the lawyers still hold all the professional responsibility with respect to the ethical obligations of it. But it does allow lawyers to focus their time on maybe court strategy and interpersonal skills like negotiation skills and more advocacy. It frees the lawyer's time up that way, but it's very much changing that. And now that there are also the other pitfalls are that it's citing fake cases and that lawyers have been caught. We just had something in my city where someone used a AI to write his argument to the court, and they flagged a fake case, and he got heavily disciplined. I don't know if he'll get disbarred. I haven't followed how far along the discipline action is going, but it made scandalous news in the city as a result. He was a very prominent lawyer who did it. So it's imperfect, but it will replace a good chunk of the work done in a law firm, and definitely what young associates do and how young associates learn. So much of that can be done by AI, which is problematic because that learning curve is so important early on. So that's what I wanted to
not at all dissimilar to what we are, what I do in the newsroom, because as an editor, I have to fact check. And oftentimes I will go to AI as my first point of reference. And then I will go from there to find it. Then I have to fact check the AI. I can't take it at its word. Otherwise, I may be putting disinformation on the air. I asked the question not too long ago, did President Trump recommend such and such? And then, and then it might give me a source, and I might go to like a news article, and it came back and said, Donald Trump is no longer president of the United States. He was president in 2000. No, it just didn't recognize that he came back as president. So there's a stark example, and obvious and easy to fact check that they were wrong on that. So yes, any attorney who is too lazy to double check the research of AI and present it as an argument in a court is at the very least going to be referred to the bar. And there's no doubt about that. And rightly so. Thank you, Abby. We'll go to Ed, followed by 7.
Hello, everyone. Well, I think AI, if we keep it as a tool, will be great because we can accomplish a lot of stuff. But when it comes to replacing people from their job, that's really a messed up situation. And I don't think people that is behind this is thinking straight about the possibilities of human self-destruction, because if the machines won't go after, like in a Terminator scenario, people with no job will lose purpose probably. Maybe a new generation will be fine, but the current people living on Earth, they're gonna probably don't know what to do. Some people might adapt to the laziness. Some people might be, I don't know, starting new creative stuff, whatever. But a lot of people probably gonna, take their own lives. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of scary to think about it. Now, if China is saying, we're not going to replace any jobs at all, I think other countries will be forced to follow the same example. Otherwise, in the entire planet Earth is going to be just Chinese people because everybody else is going to be doomed to self-destruction, I think. And lastly, maybe, and I don't know, there's a lot of conspiracies out there about the elites that are one way or the other throughout history. They try to somehow, get rid of people and then, just have the entire planet for themselves, which is crazy to think about it. But if that is the case, I think people like these AI CEOs are just useful idiots because it's so exciting. And even people, engineers working on this, in the back of their minds, they think about, this might be really, dangerous, but they keep working at it. Even if it is going to cost their jobs, they just so intoxicated with the idea that they cannot stop. So I don't know. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. We'll go to 7, followed by Rick.
Okay, thanks for bringing me up. I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that earlier you mentioned that it's not possible for an AI to help with like booking a flight plan or something, but really early conversational AI systems like Siri are able to use intents, which is like a much simpler thing than large language models to like book flights. The second thing is, I think someone mentioned that there's like a data security issue with AI, and you can actually run like AI models on your own hardware. So there isn't that same data security issue where you can find a provider that ensures that there isn't a data leak or like usage issue as well. And I think that, it's kind of the same argument with unions where it's like, is it important for us to ensure that the people who are doing these jobs have job security, have job safety, etc. And while those things are important, I think that we shouldn't create policies that inhibit the development of AI because it has potential to increase material conditions. I think instead we should create policy that ensures that everyone has access to the things that they need, like jobs, or maybe not jobs, but like something to do, or like healthcare or whatever, that they wouldn't be able to get because they were not that they wouldn't be able to get because they've been economically displaced by AI.
Thank you for that, Seven. And you're right. There are non-internet connected AI models that you can run on your own machine. And I've been reading about that, and I think that's an excellent possibility because I mean, when you're communicating with these AI models, you're giving them personal information, and they're storing it because you can come back later and it's going to remember what you discussed months ago and pick up that thread. So it's storing that information. And whenever there's a storage of information off-site, there is a vulnerability, no doubt about it. Thank you for mentioning that, Seven. We'll go to Richard, followed by Simon.
Wait, just wanted to say a few more things. I think Abby said that. Sorry, Richard, but just I think Abby mentioned the threat of like hallucination, and I think there's like a recent development in AI called mechanistic AI, which is more deterministic, and I think it would solve some of like the hallucination problems. So again, like I really don't think that we should limit the development of AI because of job security. I think that there are a lot of people who are I think concerned about like whatever kind of like social disruption will be caused, and they're suggesting, my job finally matters, or like we should worry about like safety. I think that we should just try to like think of like what's the worst problem. Like maybe people can make like weird kinds of like weapons or something, or they can do really dangerous things and prevent that. But we really shouldn't limit the development of AI because it's going to increase material conditions in exchange for like keeping jobs that I think shouldn't really exist if there's a cheaper or better way to do them.
Thank you, Simon. We'll go to Richard, followed by Simon.
Hey guys, I first want to apologize for at least two reasons. One is what I'm about to say is not based on research or expertise. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just a regular guy with an opinion. And second, what I have to say is not strictly relevant to the room topic or the room title. And I'm going to try and be as short as I can. So one of my favorite things I like to think about is the extreme circumstances of humans. And a scenario that I like to play out is, what if humans could outlive all of the stuff that goes on Earth, natural disasters, war, and everything else, and humans are able to venture out into outer space to find a new planet to inhabit. And obviously, they're going to be using AI at that point. And what if there comes a point when humans find themselves in a spot where they cannot go on, but the AI can? Almost philosophical question I pose. I really like asking others and see what they say is, would you find that to be still a success for humanity? Like, is that something that humans could say is an achievement and can be proud of?
So the
yes.
basic question to your philosophical question, the question to your question is the definition of humanity. Because humanity implies or is explicitly referring to, and then this gets back to the question I asked earlier about, can AI have souls? It sounds kind of like an absurd question, but an AI is not a human being. It doesn't have a soul, correct? So at the point that progress continues absent the input of humans, you might phrase that question by saying, well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? But I don't think humanity plays a part in it if you understand the definition of the term.
Yeah, my personal opinion is if there comes a point where humans, for whatever reason, cannot continue to survive, but AI can, I mean, that's better than nothing. AI and robots came from us humans, so
But they don't have souls, right? It's not a breathing entity. It's not something. If you believe in religion, it's not something that was created by God. It's a machine. So
I just have one.
So in your or if not, at least a comic strip. It's
All right, everybody, I'm ending this. Hope you enjoyed. This is the 5 o'clock news.